Hello and welcome to another episode of the Wild Ones podcast, the show where we chat about bike stuff. I'm back with Francis and producer Emily. How have you both been this week?
Significantly better than you two, apparently, because Emily's been very unwell because she worked too much yesterday and then has made a miraculous recovery, which I'm very happy about. You, let's address the elephant in the room, just ran to work, which doesn't sound that crazy until you realise Jimmy lives 10 miles away as the crow flies over like the Silver Hills, which is at least 10,000 meters of elevation. So how are you alive?
I'm surprisingly all right. I'll be honest. I was.
I thought you were joking because I said, "Can I have a lift to work?" And you were like, "I'm running." I was like, "Oh, that's a new one."
Basically, I woke up this morning. It looked like it might rain, and I was just like, I don't know if I want to ride my bike in because then if I get soaked going in, I'm not going to want to ride home, and I'll want to get my bike back. So I was like, well, what can I do to get into work where if I get soaked, I don't really care, and I haven't got one of my bikes stuck in town. So I was like, oh, I'll just run.
So totally logical.
So I put my kit on and I ran.
Oh, so how do you feel now?
Surprisingly, all right. I did have a 20-minute power nap when I got in. I've eaten some food. I should probably eat some more food.
It was the earliest you've ever been to work. You built in a big buffer, but you ran so fast that you were here early.
Neither of those things that you just said are, in fact, true.
Do you guys want to hear a fact?
Yeah, I love facts.
This is our 51st podcast, but it's exactly a year since we started recording. So we've missed one out of the 52 weeks of the year. 51st.
Congratulations, guys.
Our year anniversary. It was almost nearly not a podcast because usually I do the prep yesterday and I felt so unwell it didn't get done. So this has been prepped this morning before we started recording. So, you think we're usually not prepared. You haven't seen anything yet.
Today's going to be a car crash.
I was trying to think about it, and I was just like, am I the only out of the three of us? Am I the only one which has been involved in every single podcast? And then I was like, oh no, wait, there. Emily edits them, so that's.
Well, Emily wasn't customer facing or was camera facing. I ran to work. Tired. Emily wasn't camera facing for the first 20.
Something like that. You really had to coax me out of my shell.
But has been the mastermind behind it all. So
Yes.
Congratulations, Emily.
Thanks.
It's her. This is Emily's podcast.
So if you've been listening for a year or you've joined us since, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank
We're
you,
still
everybody.
here and hopefully long may it continue.
Way.
Francis, did you see that Pogacar won a stage in legwarmers a few days after you said no one's ever won a stage in legwarmers?
This is another example of people being tricked by AI.
Well, you think it wasn't real?
Yeah, I have a really good Photoshop or AI generated leg warmers.
I've got an
photo.
alternative theory. My theory is he listens to the podcast and he was just like, I'll prove them wrong. Because he wants to claim all trophies of everything ever. So he's like, all right, so Francis reckons
First person in
never
the
happened.
world
He was like,
to ever.
bam.
Yeah.
It really
smashed
overshadowed his full Giro victory, that leg warmer victory.
No, I think big conspiracy. It's no one has ever
Big
won
leg
leg
warmer.
warmers, and no one. It still hasn't happened, in my opinion. I think it's fake.
This big leg warmer, isn't it? Stepping in.
Yeah, it's the same people as Big Bass Layer.
Should we get into some news?
We should, yes.
So, a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about wanting a mashup between Zwift and World of Warcraft, and we dubbed it World of Bikecraft.
Yeah, I like where this is going to start with.
Well, it turns out someone is actually in the process of making it.
You've got to be joking.
Your dreams are about to come true.
Is this someone else that listens to the podcast?
Potentially, because we did speak about it a while back. So there's a company currently developing a turbo trainer-based game that looks pretty much like what we asked for. So shout out to Marcos in Mexico for sending this one through to us on email. It's a game called What Games, and it's described as the first ever indoor cycling game that lets you battle with fearsome enemies using your smart trainer. Immerse yourself in the beautiful crafted world of Season 1, The Apprentice Trials, with a collection of 6 intense missions where you will do battle with enemies to rescue the kingdom of Ithaca from the beasts of the Rift.
Only 6.
They got to start somewhere.
You've got to start somewhere.
There can be an expansion.
It also might be an hour a pop.
Yeah, it's a really long mission. You have to 1,000 miles per mission.
So apparently the levels will revolve around power and interval-based combat. So it'll be a form of training, just more gamified. And they've dropped a trailer and it looks Sick.
It's on Steam. Wait, really?
Yes.
This is real.
Yes, yeah. So they've dropped a trailer. In it, we see an avatar on a bike being chased by dinosaurs and giant crabs. There's a mission where you're dressed in a full suit of armor, riding around medieval castles. There's also a level at sea where you're sort of riding on a kind of water-powered cannon. It's completely crazy. Should we watch the trailer together and you can react to it?
Yes, we should. This is sick graphics. Look at that! They're going to armor. Look at. This is what I'm talking about.
How have they got this from our brains? I've been playing this in my dreams for weeks.
This is honestly the greatest. This is going to take over the world.
You. Oh! Beast Surge.
Oh, this is brilliant.
I honestly think I'm checking the URL to see if you're pranking me with like a fake Steam page. This is real. This is actually real.
This is real, absolutely. And if you're listening to this and you want to watch it, I'll drop a link in the description. It is worth having a look at. It's almost like a fever dream.
The graphics are sick.
Yeah.
The fact that it's gamified properly.
It's not quite Unreal Engine 5, is it?
Well, no, but in terms of turbo training graphics,
it's Zwift-ish, isn't it?
Well, yeah, absolutely.
With armor.
It looked like there's going to be little things like, so RPM ones, I guess you have to like spin really fast to power up, and then there was some which were suggesting you have to hold watts to like stay away from a dinosaur or something.
Yeah,
I think it's brilliant. That is exactly the sort of thing I want. I want it to happen. How do we make it happen?
I don't know. So currently it's saying, there's no release date. It just says coming soon, add to your wish list. So I don't know how we...
They often do like on Steam alpha access to games and stuff, so you can try it before it's out if you pay and you get early access and you can like help them with the development and stuff. So maybe they'll do that.
What is Steam?
Steam's an online store where you can buy games and then they're forever in your like little sidebar and you can uninstall them, but they're still
like
there.
PC games.
Yeah, PC games. Yeah.
Right. I think I'm gonna have to like try and get in touch with these people because I want to know more.
Yeah.
I want to know when it's happening. I want to be involved. I want to be able to like design some weird goblins or something or other.
You want to be in the game.
Preferably, yeah.
You're already in RuneScape as the main level 3 character.
Yeah, I was. Do we need to say this isn't an advert?
No, it isn't. It's just a thing that Marcos from Mexico sent us via email.
I wish it was.
Yeah, I mean, if they want to sponsor us and then we can play it, or just not sponsor us and also just let us play it.
Yes,
I
I'm
want
in.
to do that.
I'm in.
Yeah.
Well, excellent find and special thanks to Marcos. For sending us in. Cheers, pal.
Next up, a former EF Pro cyclist says she's lost everything and was left suicidal after returning a positive doping test that was later found not to be her fault. The most likely cause of the positive test, contamination. In a lengthy report on her personal website, Giro d'Italia women's stage winner Lizzie Banks revealed how she's fought for almost a year and spent over £40,000 to prove her innocence. She now says the World Anti-Doping Agency is failing athletes and fears that an athlete in her situation will end up taking their own life. So what happened? Emily, do you want to explain more?
Yes, so Lizzie was told 79 days after taking a test that she was going to get a 2-year racing ban because 2 substances were found in her system. The first was her asthma medication, which she's been taking for 4 years and has appeared on other tests in the same quantities without any issue. The second was 70 nanograms of a diuretic called chlortalidone. For context, 70 nanograms is a tiny dose. A nanogram is a billionth of a gram. And chlortalidone is a diuretic that is very commonly used to treat hypertension. Diuretics are banned because they can be used as masking agents for things like steroids. So diuretics work because they make you pee more. So this can help flush out and therefore mask performance-enhancing drugs. However, in those cases, we typically see them present in samples in much, much larger quantities. Plus, it's my understanding that this particular one stays in your system for a very long time compared to regular diuretics. So basically, you'd be an absolute fool to choose this one if you were going to use it for that purpose. So Lizzie says she had absolutely no idea where this diuretic had come from. She dedicated the next 9 months of her life and all of her savings on legal advice and lab testing to try and find out. One of the things she did have on her side is that she previously studied medicine. So she was able to use her knowledge to create a 42,000 word body of evidence that she gave to UK anti-doping that showed the chlortalidone had likely inadvertently entered her body through pharmaceutical contamination. In other words, cross-contamination between different meds during the manufacturing process. It's a bit like when you see on a packet of food with that doesn't contain any nuts, it'll say something like may contain nuts because it's being produced in the same factory. And this could potentially affect everything from basic paracetamol to stuff that you prescribe for longer term health conditions. In fact, Lizzie found evidence that pharmaceutical cross-contamination is rampant, and there was reports warning how it could be potentially devastating for athletes. And although she was never able to find the exact cause of the contamination, UK anti-doping eventually agreed that the chlortalidone had probably entered her system through contaminated pharmaceutical product and that she was not at fault. But she says the risk of pharmaceutical contamination like this had already been flagged to WADA and UK anti-doping as a potential issue. And she believes that WADA may be hiding the true scale of this problem. So she wrote on her website, "My theory is that WADA is aware of the scale of pharmaceutical contamination and that there is a discrepancy between pharmaceutical rules, the ever-increasing sensitivity of testing, and WADA's zero tolerance policy. The problem is that if WADA openly admits that this discrepancy is an issue, it would be impossible for them to maintain their own rules and the whole system risks falling apart." So ultimately, anti-doping is meant to catch the bad guys, but I think the powerful thing about this story is that it's potentially brought into question how that entire process works and if it is in fact harming athletes.
It almost feels like they're taking the approach of we're better off banning more people than we should be banning to have a better chance of catching the people that are cheating.
Yeah, it's a funny one. Sensitivity of testing has gone up and up and up, which is why they're able now to find things like trace nanograms of substances, and they have a zero tolerance policy. So if anything is found, it would be flagged.
It allows such bias as well, though, doesn't it? Because, like, say you were from a particular nation and an athlete from a country was absolutely battering your nation, you could try and desperately to find something that's so small that you know isn't really having any impact just to get them a ban, knowing that, like, you know, this is someone that has a academic medical background and had to spend 40 grand. Like, that isn't going to be a lot of people.
Yeah, I think the main thing that this case brings up is, as Lizzie says, it's most likely to affect people who are taking regular medication for chronic health conditions. They are the people who are likely to be at a much bigger risk of contamination events and inadvertently having positive tests. The more medication you're taking, that is not, banned or controlled in any way.
Yeah, like antihistamines or whatever.
Whatever it is, exactly. The pill, any sort of medication that you regularly have to take is potentially contaminated. And by contaminate, it's not something that would really affect you or I. You're not going to find adverse reactions to the pills that you're taking because it is in such small quantities of contamination, but for athletes whose job it is to be tested and can have their livelihood taken away from them based on the results of that, it disproportionately affects people like that. It also disproportionately affects people who are not as rich, because the stance is you are guilty until proven innocent. Basically, you are at the whim of UK anti-doping to protect your reputation. And in a lot of cases, that probably is the right thing to do. You know, especially in cycling, we want to know that there is a rigorous process around anti-doping. However, I don't know, I think that this case definitely made me look at things differently, I would say.
It doesn't feel right, does it?
It doesn't feel right, no.
And like Lizzie is such an amazing bike rider, and it's so sad that she now isn't out there racing.
Yeah, so she said after this, the ban got overturned, obviously. It was found that it wasn't her fault, but I think the mental toll of trying to fight this and protect her reputation just said it's just kind of ruined her. She's not returning to racing. She's focused on trying to rebuild herself financially and her mental health as well.
I wonder if you could sue for loss of chance. Something like that.
I don't think that. I think she talks about this as well, and she says currently there's no sort of case to be able to do that. They made her sign a thing that basically said they would take it as, I can't remember what the term was, but it's almost like a knock for knock, like whatever's happened in the past, you've paid money, we've done this, it's all been settled, just let the dust settle and no one can kind of come after anyone in the future.
Sketch that.
It'll probably come down to the fact that they didn't ban her incorrectly. They've banned her based on their findings, but what Lizzie has managed to convince them is that their findings are not appropriate. Mm-hmm. So it's like they're not saying they've done anything wrong. They would probably still be banning people in the same conditions, but they won't be able to fight it. Yeah,
the biggest thing actually about this case is that she was not able to prove or find the original source of the contamination, because that is one of UK anti-doping's rules, that to be able to overturn anything like this, you have to prove the source.
79 days it took them to alert her to a problem. So how are you going to remember what it could have been?
Exactly.
It could be the asthma medication.
It could be the asthma medication. Exactly. She is someone who takes regular medication for asthma. She actually, in the report, says that she stopped taking her asthma medication because she was so worried about that. And then she couldn't walk upstairs. She has incredibly bad asthma and she was having adverse effects from that, but she just didn't know what to do.
It's worrying. Just makes you think, I mean, that's the whole point of blowing it up from her side. How many people have been in that situation and just been like, oh, I can't fight that. I'm just giving up.
Exactly,
and then career over. That's it. And you just don't ever hear about it or you might see this person got banned and then they never race again.
This is it, yeah. There's a case that she talks about with a young Olympic hopeful, and he was found to have another type of diuretic in his system, and they traced it back to water contamination. So
really, you can't really do anything to
this is
protect
it, exactly.
yourself
because
properly.
we're all peeing. We all take medication and we're all peeing out stuff, and it comes out in our pee, and things are treated but not necessarily in trace elements. So there's contaminant. I think our world is so complicated that there's actually contamination everywhere. But how do you start to I think potentially WADA and anti-doping in different countries are it's like opening a bag of worms, isn't it? Is that what you say, a bag of worms?
Yeah.
Can of worms.
Can of worms. Yeah.
A bag of worms is just a bigger version.
Yeah, exactly. A big old bag of worms.
One of the many concerning things about this is it really says that the best chances of not getting caught for doping are the people that are the richest at the absolute top, which is the people that you most want to get caught for doping. Not caught for, like, if they're doing it, you want them to get found out. But they are the most likely people to be able to avoid it because they can afford to only drink water from a particular source that is then scientifically batch tested every single time they drink it. They don't take stuff off the side from shops and things. They're probably, like, all of these pro teams are probably given vetted water every single bottle of water they drink rather than getting it from a shop and things like that.
You reckon?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Because the risk of something like this happening. Imagine you are on a £500,000 contract trying to win all these races, and your entire career can be done over because you drink a bottle of water from a shop. You're just not going to risk it. And the teams aren't going to risk it because they're investing so much money.
And the difference is that if you are a very, very high-profile person and there is an anomaly flagged, you have a lot of weight behind you. So it was widely reported that Chris Froome's defence totaled €7 million for... I'm not sure actually what that was. It was some sort of anti-doping anomaly that came up, and the total defence of that cost €7 million.
And it got cleared?
I believe so, yes.
And presumably that money came from... Was it Ineos at that point or Team Sky?
Sky.
Whichever one it was, because it looks bad for them if one of their riders gets done.
Exactly, of course, yeah. And this disproportionately affects poorer athletes. And we also have to think about it in terms of gender pay gaps. You know, we know that a lot of the female side of the peloton is getting paid much less than men. And we're talking about how do we improve female participation in sport and help that side grow. This is only going to hinder that as well. It's not specifically a female problem because there's lots of male cyclists not getting paid very much if they're not at the top either. But this is, I don't know. I just think, I don't know what the conclusion is. It's just quite eye-opening, I think. But ultimately, Lizzie's fight on this and this precedent of this case where ultimately they have decided that, yes, it probably was contamination and she hasn't had to prove the source, will act as precedent for other athletes going forward now trying to fight their case. They can use her case to be able to help them. So that is a good thing. I don't think any of us want to see less people who are abusing the rules get found out because of this. We don't want them to be able to hide behind stuff like this, but also I don't want to see good, hardworking, fair athletes being victims of
It really is sad for the sport because Lizzie is such an exciting bike racer.
Yeah, she's great.
She's just like one of those bike racers that you just like, whenever you see her in the start of a race, you just knew it was going to be exciting.
You guys filmed a video with her before?
Long time ago.
Story.
Yeah, we did a video with Story Racing many years ago, and
that's when she was studying medicine.
Yeah, Lizzie was a young up-and-coming athlete, which then obviously went on to much bigger things and amazing things.
Yeah.
Sorry to hear that you've had to go through such horrible stuff, Lizzie, and I hope somehow you managed to find some peace and am able to put it behind you somehow.
Yeah, and if you're interested in knowing more about this story, go to her website, Lizzie Banks, where she has a very, very long write-up, but it is worth reading. Or like I did, I just put it into a TSS reader and let it read to me instead while I was getting ready.
Text to speech? Text
to speech, yeah.
Like an audiobook?
Yeah, literally, yeah.
Is it the weird TikTok voice?
It is an odd voice, yeah. It's very much a computerized voice, but it means that I could do other stuff while I was listening to it. She also was on the cycling podcast, and I think she's told her story on there as well. I asked her to come on ours, but she hasn't seen the message. So maybe one day we'll get her on. I like her a lot. So
please.
We should also add that in response to Lizzie's story, WADA said this. This is a complex and nuanced area of anti-doping in which WADA always strives to strike the right balance for the good of athletes and clean sport. They said they couldn't comment specifically on this case, except to say that, as in all cases, WADA will review it to ensure it has been dealt with appropriately under the rules. Meanwhile, UK Anti-Doping said it notes Lizzie's comments with concern and will be looking into what it can do to better support athletes going through anti-doping rule violation proceedings.
And finally, in other doping news, a cyclist and former actor was involved in a hit and run on a race director last week after apparently trying to flee the scene of a bike race where he was suspected of motor doping. That's a real sentence that I just wrote.
There's a bonkers headline, that, isn't it?
So this kicked off at a French amateur stage race.
Giovan Battista.
Giovan Battista Iera, a 53-year-old Italian former actor and bike racer who counts Mark Cavendish among his Instagram followers, was in third position overall heading into the final stage of the race. but he was suspected of cheating by both the race organisers and other competitors after he managed to close a huge gap and strange noises were heard coming from his bike. Pictures on social media also appeared showing a bonus wire sticking out of his bike, but when race directors attempted to check over the bike, he grabbed it, bunged it in his van, and then tried to flee the scene. Race director Frédéric Lenormand ran after the van, which was being driven by a teammate, and was apparently thrown up onto the car's hood for 100 metres before the pair finally got away. Seems sketch. According to local reports, Giovan Battista wasn't charged over the incident, but the driver has been charged with aggravated willful violence and will appear in court in January.
What a wild story that is.
Yeah. I've actually just
Got the picture in there.
plopped in the pictures if you want to have a look at those.
Oh, that could just be a DI2.
So it says the most suspicious detail in the suspected mechanical doping case is the 3 wires emerging from the heat shrink tubing. Using heat shrink here is common for aero gains, but should have only 2 wires, one for DI2 electronic and one for the rear brake.
Maybe we should maybe we should motor dope a bike.
Yeah.
And
See how easy it actually is.
Yes,
to get it
please
in,
do.
to
One of those little
get one into a
motors, 'cause
normal
They
frame.
must be available somewhere.
Yeah.
The small motors, they usually just above the crankset, aren't they? I've seen X-rays of bikes.
Yeah.
We should make one.
Yeah.
See how much of a difference it makes as well. If we can even work it out.
'Cause in a lot of cases, they're being ridden. What do they swap bikes? It's being ridden to the crucial part of the race, then switched on to use for a short amount of time because of battery, and you get
Although
some
that said,
extra watts.
Oh no, because the Di2 battery
It's not.
tiny,
No, it's
but
using
it's doing
using
hardly
barely any
anything,
power.
isn't it?
But as soon as you're adding 200 watts of power, or
Yeah.
100 watts of power,
Yeah.
which would be enough to make a big difference.
I kind of feel like surely they're only generating something like 20, 30 watts, but that is enough when something's as tight as a highly competitive race. Because if you've got
But
an extra
100 watts is huge.
Yeah.
In a situation, as long as it's not affecting like the raw watts that you're putting in as well.
if you got a bonus
just
30
adding.
watts for like 5 minutes at the back end of a race when you're either trying to break away or chase back on, like that's going to make a difference, isn't it?
All right, let's make this bike, and then we'll sneak it into a race. I mean, no.
We'll definitely sneak it into a race.
What, to prove how easy it is?
Yes.
But then we'll get we'll have
Yeah,
to,
and then
we'll have to run away and run someone over.
We will read our own news in a couple of months' time.
2 masked men.
Masked men. Two weirdos show up at bike race with full head helmets. Can you wear a full face helmet in a bike race?
Like a
road
full
race?
head helmet.
Yeah, can you do that? You probably.
Or perhaps we don't enter a race, but we do just
What's the
build
point then?
we build the bike and test it and see
I've
what
run
it,
a race in years,
what it looks
Emily.
like. I'm interested to know how that works and
Yeah.
All right, let's actually put it on a list of possible video ideas and see if we can. I'll do a bit of digging.
Yeah, we'll find one. We'll just ask someone who's blatantly used one in the past.
Time for another round of overrated or underrated. I'm going to read out a list of things, and you're going to tell me if they are overrated or underrated. First up is quick release skewers.
Fairly integral part of a bike.
as opposed to through axle.
Well, it's more than just the skewer, isn't it? It's a big system.
What, a bike?
Nah. It's like a whole frame set and everything. It limits. It's not just the one item.
Well, yeah, it's essentially implying that it's in most cases a rim brake bike.
You can put your wheel in wonky with a quick release, but you can't really do that with a through axle.
I have been riding home before and someone has stopped me to tell me that my back wheel, no, was it my back wheel or was it my front wheel? My back wheel wasn't on properly. It was a quick release that I'd kind of gone and not put in properly. And I was like, oh yeah, I thought I was shifting funny. And thankfully I didn't do any bunny hops that day because I love a bunny hop. But if I had done that, I would have been splat on the floor because my wheel basically wasn't connected to my bike.
It's quite easy to if you haven't been tinkering with bikes for a long time, putting in a wheel slightly skew happens a lot.
Also easy at steel.
Well, yeah, I guess it is. You don't need a tool.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a difficult overrated
It
underrated.
is, because I also have a very soft spot for rim brakes, obviously, as anyone which has ridden bikes for more than 10 years does.
Yeah.
On the flip side, through axles are a pain. If you are taking your wheels on and off a bike, like to put it in a car or whatever.
So I think I have, and I don't know, I might just get shot down here by some engineers. There are these through axles that I have on the Villia that I was given by Villia as a sponsor deal years ago, and I rebuilt that bike recently. And the through axles on it are made by Mavic, despite never owning a pair of Mavic wheels. They are like a speed release, so it's a double lead thread. So they tighten up with half as many turns as a regular through axle. Why are you looking at me so funny?
trying
to imagine it.
Your weird
so they do up and undo really fast, and then as soon as they're undone, you pull them out a tiny little bit, and then the wheel slips out. And it's like, I guess they're expensive, or perhaps they're not the best design thing in the world because they haven't been used in years after that, really. Are they around? Are pro teams using them? I don't know. I've only ever seen them on that one bike I've got.
I feel like Emily's Topstone has got some kind of thing that's trying to do that sort of thing as well. Like the idea of like being somewhere in between, that it's a through axle, but it just is a lot easier. It's
so much easier. I think they're great. And you do them up and then they go click into place and that's it, done. Obviously, the fork and the frame has to have the right.
Are quick release skewers overrated or underrated? I'm going to say underrated now.
Yeah, I feel like you don't get them as much. Is that because it's a rim brake thing?
Basically, yeah.
Right.
You can
there
get...
are disc brake ones there. We've got one there hanging up.
The disc brake standard has all moved across to through axles. But that Halford's bike is a quick release disc brake bike. So the only place you really find them now is the lower end space.
I quite like them, as long as you put your wheel on properly.
Speaking as someone that only rides disc brake bikes.
Yeah. Well, I just remember I used...
It was your Moss bike.
No, my Specialized Ruby, whatever it was, that was disc and quick release.
It would have been, because it was a really early disc brake bike.
Yep. And I preferred it to the faffing about that I do now with my through axle.
That's fair. You convinced me. Underrated. Love a quick release.
Next up, suggested by Austin, toe clips.
Underrated.
So by toe clips, we're talking about like flat pedals with the basket on the front.
Yeah, a clip or a strap or something that holds your foot in.
So when I was a single speed London cruise around town boy, I used to use shoes and straps quite a lot. I used to like a strap. If it was anything more than a strap, I used to hate it because I always used to find my the tip of my shoe or something or other would like catch on it and it'd be like, ooh, horrible. Are they underrated? No, not really. Are they overrated?
No, not really.
Not really, but I'm going to go with yes, based on Francis's overreaction to how good they are.
I think they're cool.
I'd rather...
As a run around town thing, stick on your bike, you still get some of the benefit. You can wear normal shoes, but you can be connected to the bike. Good.
I think I would just use flat pedals rather than a toe clip.
Going off on a slight tangent, this reminded me that we had an email in this week from a lady called Lauren in Darlaw, near us, saying, "Love the podcast. I have a question about shoes. I cannot get away with clipless shoes. I've tried and I hate them, but I know how important shoes are on the bike. What shoes or type of shoes would you recommend for longer rides, 60 kilometers plus on flat pedals on a road bike? Would you recommend toe clips or just stick with the flat pedals and..."
If Lauren is struggling with cleats, then a toe clip, in my opinion, is going to be worse because you feel even more stuck into them. Probably, if Lauren hasn't already tried it, SPD's loosened off loads is relatively easy to pull yourself out of if you need to. In terms of shoes, if I was doing what Lauren is doing, I'd be looking at probably mountain bike shoes. As in not SPDs, as in actual shoes that mountain bike wears, mountain bikers wear that don't have cleats in the bottom. Super flat, will have some rigidity to them, so they'll be good for power transfer. You can walking them, but they'll be a bit stiffer. Is my thoughts on that. Anything to add?
I've never experimented much with flat pedals other than just around town with trainers on. And I wouldn't want to do that for much longer than 20 minutes.
Yeah, ultimately the problem with normal shoes is they are so flexible that it just
Create a lot of fatigue.
yeah, it doesn't feel great pushing power through just a flat shoe unless you get a really, really flat pedal rather than one that's got like holes and things in it. Because there are some pedals out there. We've actually got some on the wall that is like a normal flat pedal, but it's like a full-on platform that like your whole foot fits on. Well, not your whole foot, the whole ball of your foot on. But I would definitely go and try some mountain bikers shoes because they're super flush on the bottom, so they'll sit nice on a pedal and presumably have some elements of rigidity in some of them.
They're made to work with pedals like the ones next to the ones you were just talking about on the wall, which have studs, and they're extremely grippy.
Yep.
Extremely grippy. And they're made so your feet don't slip off when you're riding on a trail.
Because I always remember the guy that is Howler Frameworks is a good friend of mine and Emily, Billy. He is comes from a mountain bike background, and I used to send me all these pictures of him like doing these like massive 20-meter jumps in the air with his bike sideways and then landing, and I'd be like, how are you not clipped into those pedals? He's like, oh, it's just all technique. You just like it's good contact points and like burying your feet in particular ways and stuff like that. I'm like, oh, I don't know about that. Next up, we have Fidlock bottles, which is suggested by Andy, who says, I'm close to converting to Fidlock bottles on my gravel bikes. Just curious as to why you think more riders aren't using them. Is it tradition, cost, or just that conventional water bottles are much more available at races and events? So I think Francis and me are going to disagree on this. So let's start with you. The caveat to this is Cade Media historically has been, or actually Francis has historically been sponsored by Fidlock, but we no longer have a relationship with Fidlock.
Yet I still use them.
You do, yeah.
Yeah. If you're racing, overrated, because you can't use them for racing properly. You need to get bottles from cars, you need to get bottles from the side of the road, and then they'd have to also be Fidlocks. A Fidlock is a magnetic piece which bolts into where a bottle cage would go, and then their bottle has to have the attachment on to magnet onto that. So they're just a magnetic twisty bottle. The benefit is that they don't come off ever unless you twist them clockwise.
Not true. If you have a small frame, every time you lift a bike up to go onto your roof, the handlebars will swing around and knock the bottle off.
I don't put my bike on roofs.
You do, because it's happened a million times where we've put bikes on the roofs.
Yeah.
Jimmy puts your bike on the roof, so you don't have to do it.
Yeah, Jimmy can do that. Yeah.
I think they're massively overrated. They are good. I like that it's neat when the bottle's not on there. It allows, if you've got bags and things, it just like tucks in underneath it. But I just think it's just massively, it's overpriced. It's not necessary.
Do you reckon it's a solution to a problem that doesn't exist?
Yeah,
100%.
I was about to say this. Have you ever heard of the company Joseph and Joseph?
It's like kitchenware.
It's like
and things.
kitchenware and stuff. But Jimmy loves it, and I think that the tagline for that company should be creating solutions to problems that don't exist. It's all very like nice and sleek, and it's a different way of doing things. But arguably, is it a better way of doing things? I'm not sure. However, the caveat is I have not used them, so perhaps with Fidlock, ignorance is bliss. But I've never once pulled my bidon from my thing and gone, God, I wish this was easier. It's such a faff. You just bosh, drink it back.
I think I've lost too many bottles.
Have you?
Yeah.
Why? What are you doing wrong?
Actually riding my bike, like we've been mountain biking once together, Jimmy. If you do that more, suddenly you lose bottles. And I know you can get cages which you can bend into place.
So you're exclusively talking about mountain biking?
No, gravel as well.
You lose bottles on gravel?
I've lost unbound. Bottles bounce off all over the place. You're in a peloton and there's fucking people's bottles going everywhere. And I'm there I don't have to worry about it because the Fidlock's there. And the Fidlocks do not, like enduro guys.
You've got a bladder pack on your back anyway, so you don't need a bottle.
Oh no, you need. Yeah, you should. There was.
I'm winding you up.
They ran out of water at the first water stop.
Oh,
so
Jesus.
I was very happy that I had both the bladder thing and bottles.
I'm just looking at the price of a Fidlock, and
it's like 50 quid or
they're
something.
expensive.
Yeah, for a, I would say what is a standard size bottle. You can get a small one, but you want like a normal bidon. For that and one of the clippies, one of them starts at €45.
Yeah.
So if you wanted two, that's €90, which is probably something like 90 quid. 80 quid, something like that, isn't it?
Yeah.
There's no like cheap option, whereas bottle cages, you can spend 100 quid on one,
Yeah.
but you can also spend 10 quid.
You
and
can,
it's probably
yeah.
okay. You probably maybe be better off spending somewhere in the middle. 20 quid, 30 quid, and you get a really
I disagree
good bottles.
because there's always those like plastic bottle cages that I can't remember who makes them. Little bit pointy ones. You used to be able to get them for less than a tenner a pop. They like hold any bottle in unbelievably well. 20 quid, two bottle cages, and then you can stick whatever bottle you want in it.
However, if you are a person who is going on rides and losing all your bottles all the time, then it probably is the perfect product for you. I did not realize that these people existed in the world, but apparently they do. One sat right
Bottles
in front
go
of me.
flying. They just do.
They were fine. So if that is you, then underrated, I would say, and for the rest of us, overrated.
Do you want to know my other silly reason why they're good?
Yes.
Because when you take a photo of your bike and you take them off, then there isn't, you take your bottles off, but there's just two very tiny little black things instead of ugly bottle cages.
Yeah, it looks sleek. I will give you that. It does look sleek.
I think what we're actually getting here is, and it's got nothing to do with bottles dropping off. I think actually you like the look of Fidlock mounts as not being bottle cages, and therefore you prioritize them over cages.
I don't think that's why I prioritize them. All my bikes just have them on now, so I'm not going to go backwards, am I?
I have to caveat this though with not all bottles are created equally.
And not all bottle cages either.
And
You have to find the right marriage so that they just go clop and clip in nice and firmly.
You do, yeah.
I wish really cheap, crappy bottles that often get given away in packages at races and things weren't a thing, because they wear out really fast and it's just plastic. At least with Fidlocks, you could have two and they'll last maybe years. You know, you just wash them. I've put mine through the dishwasher thousands times, and and that's not a Fidlock exclusive thing. That's just a good quality plastic bottle.
I agree. I think that plastic bidons generally, most of them are overrated. I actually bought one of those. It was expensive. A Camelback. It's like a metal thing.
Is it good?
It's good. It's heavy. If you care about that,
It doesn't fit in a bottle
The
cage.
specialized ones.
It doesn't fit in your bottle cage. It fits in my bottle cage.
And it stays in.
Yeah, it stays in.
Oh,
It's
wow.
absolutely fine. It's got a bit of weight behind it, so it keeps it down. But the main reason I like it is that it doesn't taste like plastic.
So I think I was riding home a couple of weeks ago, and I took so some of the brands we do work with send us bottles. So again, on the shelf by the Fidlocks, we've just got some other bottles. There was a couple of bottles there from Tailfin ones. They're not their own branded ones. They are specialized purist bottles, which if I remember rightly from when we got bottles manufactured with Atticus years and years and years ago, they are very expensive even to manufacture.
Yeah.
They are great. It's such a good bottle. We also have some from Redshift, which I'm planning to steal next once I've left.
You could do a top 10 bottles video.
I don't think there is top 10. I think there's top 2. Fidlock, Specialized Purist.
Yeah. No, Specialized are big in the bottle game, aren't they?
They were,
They are
yeah.
making a lot. Well, I don't know. They were, I guess. I don't know if they still are, but they were making a lot of other people's bottles, weren't they?
Specialized Purist is 12 quid.
That's
That's a good price.
I have an issue with what stuff tastes like out of bottles, and the purist ones claim that they don't taste rank, and as of yet, do not taste rank.
I
Interesting.
can't taste any of that.
I wish I'd known that before I bought my expensive metal bottle, Jimmy.
Well, we took them from Nick Vieri's bike shop, and we haven't paid for them yet.
Oh, have we not?
No, so hopefully he'll forget.
Oh,
And,
sorry, Nick.
and also hope he doesn't listen to the podcast.
Oh.
And the final suggestion, which I'm assuming has come from producer Emily, Star Wars Episode 1, 2, and 3.
Prequels, I think they're underrated, excellent films.
Well, it isn't prequels, it's just Episode 1, 2, and 3. Depends how old you are.
What?
Well, if you're old, then they're probably the prequels. If you're not old, then it's just Episode 1, 2, and 3.
Oh, I see. If
You didn't know
actually
about the
watched-
others. That's fair. Jar Jar Binks' conspiracy is actually a Sith Lord. So watch them knowing that, and it improves your viewing experience significantly.
He's very annoying, isn't he?
There's multiple scenes where he's like waving his hands around, Jedi mind trick or Sith mind trick.
I think so. We recently watched all 3 of them. I despise the CGI throughout.
Wait, what about the pod race? The pod race is an excellent bit of cinema.
I think I fell asleep in that bit. I think they are massively underrated as films.
Oh, okay.
Do you know what? So, I am 32 years old, and as yet, I have never watched...
You're 32?
Yeah.
That's what you're supposed to say, isn't it?
And as yet, I have never watched Star Wars. I watched... No, that's not true. I saw episode 7, 8, 9, the new ones. But I'd never really watched...
Post-quills.
The post-quills. And I'd never really watched the other ones. So we have decided to watch it, and I'm potentially one of the few people who is watching it in order. So I watched 1, then I watched 2, then I watched 3, then we watched Obi-Wan Kenobi, the series.
Oh, so good.
And now we are on 4, A New Hope, and I've not seen 5 or 6 yet.
I am actually a bit jealous that you are going to sort of experience Star Wars chronologically.
Yeah.
The best films for the first time as well.
Yeah.
That's coming.
And
It's good.
the best part is when you're talking about stuff and I actually know what's going on because I've never experienced that before. I've never been part of a Star Wars chat before.
I know Emily hates old stuff.
I hate old stuff.
Despises old stuff. But what I know about the Star Wars episode 4, 5, 6 are so old that CGI isn't a thing. And therefore, they're great.
I have to be honest, I think sometimes expectation going into something can really affect what your judgment is. My opinion of all of it was pretty much in the gutter because I don't like old stuff. So that's the 70s one's gone. And Jimmy, well, everyone talks about how the CGI is terrible on the first ones. So I was like, okay, this is going to be like a 2 out of 10. And honestly, I think they've all been great.
They're good.
I've been proved very wrong.
The story in 1, 2, 3 is very good.
I don't think the CGI was bad. I really like the background. The only weird thing is how Anakin's voice has gone from him to James Earl Jones just all of a sudden. That seems odd. I know it's the mask. I understand that, but why?
Yeah, it's the mask and the breathing tubes and all that stuff. There's
Yeah.
a lot of like surgical things that went on there.
Have you watched Obi-Wan Kenobi, the series?
Yeah, I've seen everything.
Oh, so good.
Have you watched Andor?
Of course.
Okay. I
Obviously.
think Andor was better. Andor was the best
So
Star
Emily,
Wars thing I've watched in years.
technically, chronologically, Andor is what we should be watching now. But Andor is not is a prequel to
Rogue One.
Rogue One. Both Andor and Rogue One sit outside of the timeline or outside of the story arc that is Vader and the,
You don't have
the
to watch them
Skywalkers.
to get this. Story.
And therefore, Emily vetoed it, and we're going to come back to Andor and
yeah.
Rogue
We're going to
One.
do 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then do Andor and stuff. But yeah, I'm enjoying it greatly, and I would say they're underrated because everyone says the CGI is bad. I didn't think it was that bad. I thought it was fine. And everyone says, oh, it's really political and boring. I thought that was interesting, seeing how it became the Empire.
So the most underrated bit about the prequels, episode 1, is the movie poster, which is up there as one of the best movie posters in the world ever. And it almost is a bit spoilery, but who hasn't seen the film? So
Me.
Episode 1.
yes, it's a picture of Anakin as a boy with a shadow being cast behind him.
Oh, yeah.
That's an excellent bit of graphic communication. Do you know E.T. is in the same universe as Star Wars?
Is it?
Yeah, in the prequels somewhere there's those, there's the Senate, the Galactic Senate, and
Yeah.
they're all
Oh,
like
yes, they put
shouting
them in.
and stuff, and there's the pods. And in one of the pods there's 3 E.T. aliens.
Is there?
Yeah.
Oh,
And then in E.T., so there's a kid on Halloween dressed as Yoda walking around, and E.T. recognizes him.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
really?
A lot of useless facts in my head.
Thank you for those awesome suggestions. If you have a topic you want us to debate on Overrated, Underrated, please send it into wildonespodcast@cademedia.co.uk and we might read yours out on a future episode. Next up, we have Fluff Up of the Week.
Oh, this is mine.
Shameful is what this is.
Oh, this is it.
So we all got together the other Friday and had a delicious Indian meal, and I ordered a vegetarian paneer something. I've been vegetarian for 10 years, and I accidentally ate meat for the first time because there was a big chunk of something that I just lobbed in my gob. And what was the first thing I said? Oh, this tastes delicious. And as I was chewing it, I went, oh. And then I went, oh no, I know what that is.
What was it, like chicken tikka?
It was
like a skewer thing, wasn't it? And somehow they'd end up getting a piece of chicken on it instead of paneer.
Yeah. I don't know what the sauce around it was.
You can complain to them and get free meals forever.
I sort of went, oh no, it's chicken. And then was like, do I spit it out? And I was like, yeah, no, I am going to spit it out. And I spat it out and I went, that tasted delicious. But I did not swallow it. I did not choose knowingly to put it in my mouth. So I think I still count as a vegetarian.
Shame. You have to reset your app.
Yeah, I know I will
0
have
days.
to. Yeah, my streak is at an end.
Do you think they did it on purpose? It's like if we sly a bit of chicken in every now and again, people go, I'm not a vegetarian
Get them
anymore.
back.
Yeah, they did.
May as well just eat chicken
They did
again.
it to spite us because even the delivery man was judging us at the door because
No, not us, you.
Yeah, me and Scott, we ordered a pizza from the curry. It's like a naan pizza. They put so they will be like, who orders this?
So you both got a massive platter of Indian food, and then on the side you got a full naan pizza.
Yeah, side pizza.
Absolutely outrageous.
Yeah.
Did it have like cheddar cheese on the top?
Yeah, normal pizza. It was just a pizza.
It wasn't. It had like
None.
It had
Curry
tikka
in it.
in it.
Yeah, curry sauce instead of tomato sauce on the base. Yeah.
obviously.
Well, it's got to be somewhat curry related, isn't it? From a curry place. Let's head over to your emails because it's time for listeners' takeover. First up, we got Sean, and he says, hello to all the Cade Media team from Preston in the Northwest. I'm fairly new to cycling, and your content has helped me so much with bike maintenance and news. In your video on the new SRAM AXS, or Axis, Francis mentioned that he generally only cycles one by. This is something I'm looking to do to my bike, but I'm unsure on what size chainring and cassette to change to. Living near to the hills means my priority is good climbing ratio over outright speed. Any suggestions would be greatly appreciated.
My first thought, and I probably want to get it in first, is
Don't bother.
you riding one by is very unique to the riding that you do. And in my opinion, for someone that just does normal recreational riding, especially if it's hilly, stick with two by.
There is no reason to ride one by other than it's kind of cool.
Well,
But,
but if you think
there's no logical
a
reason.
lot of the riding you do is bikepacking trips, which is often an extreme gravel type setup, which are nearly always one by.
Yeah.
If it isn't a bikepacking trip, it's commuting here, which is either on a one by e-bike or a gravel bike, which is one by, or a road bike, which you've got like a weird road bike setup, which is also one by, but with lots of gear range, so it's fine for you commuting, and you're also a strong rider. If you were going to go out and do a 60-mile bike ride around the Pennines, yes, you could do it on one by, but you would probably pick a road bike that actually had a two by setup.
And it's probably, the road bike setup is probably very inefficient because of cross chaining and size of the chain ring as well. So your chain tension, everything's all a bit weird.
The road one by setup, you
Yeah,
mean?
yeah. Because I've ended up putting quite a small chain ring on. So I wasn't fitting up. Well, the ride home is uphill the whole way.
Yep.
I'd rather just have an easier gear.
There's
no reason to.
Can I say, I feel like on a podcast before, you have said the words, one by is underrated. So perhaps that has steered people to believing that one by is underrated. And then what you said there is no logical reason to have one by. So what is
It's all about application and what you're doing.
Okay.
Like if I am riding road and I'm riding road for a longer period of time, two by is always going to be my choice. And I think that's probably the same for Francis. Is that fair to say?
No, I'm not fussed anymore. I'm not racing. I don't care about having a really fast bike and a really efficient setup. And that's fine. And I can do all of my road riding on it. If I was racing or if I was doing like fast group rides where you're on descents, even if it's slightly downhill and a group could ride away from you if you're not pedaling, then you'd be in trouble with the one by because you literally can't. But there's no situations that I ride in where I need a big gear. I just stop pedaling and just
If you were going to go out on a road,
50k an hour.
a 50-mile road ride with Tony Fawcett or Pete Hawkins,
still one by is fine. I'm saying for most, as long as you have enough gears on the easy end of the spectrum.
which of course is personal as well, isn't it?
But people, I'm sure there's arguments. So like I have so many different bikes that wearing out chains doesn't really fuss me that much because I'm switching between them all the time, and then we're testing a new bit of group set, and then we're testing another bike, and we're borrowing a bike for a bit. Like, my personal bikes don't get the same amount of use as Sean's personal bikes, probably.
Yeah, very likely.
Therefore, go with what lasts the longest. I'm sure, like, you're constantly stretching the limits of, like, you're cross-chaining a lot.
Yeah.
And parts going to wear out faster. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Are you saying to Sean, don't go one by? He said, this is something that I am looking to do to my bike, but I'm unsure on what size chainring cassette to change to. So change to implies that he is currently riding 2x and is thinking about changing to 1x. Mm-hmm. It's unclear whether it's a road or a gravel. Is that right? He says he lives near hills. So are you saying to him that he shouldn't bother?
Well, he can if he wants, but it's ultimately to get big range in a 1x setup, you have to have a relatively small chainring, and you need to have a rear mech that can handle a big cassette. So what you end up with is a big cassette on the back and a small chainring. So you still have enough climbing gears. You also then end up with a cassette at the back, which has got much bigger spaces between it. So you're less likely to find a gear that's just like the sweet spot for you in terms of cadence on whatever particular road you're on. It all comes down to what you like the look of, what your preferences are, what kind of riding you're doing, how much riding you're doing. My road bikes are always 2x, and I don't really see a scenario where that isn't going to be the case. The only road scenario where I would have a 1x setup is if I also had something like a classified hub, which is essentially still a 2x.
It is, yeah.
My bike's got a relatively small 40-tooth chainring on it and a 10 sprocket at the back. So that's the biggest gear I can ride.
So that's essentially a gravel chainring 40-tooth. A gravel bike chainring.
Yeah.
Do you know what the cassette is?
10...
34 or something
34,
like that.
yeah. Maybe a 36. What's the most... It's the biggest we could squeeze onto the Force mech.
I guess it's 34, 36.
And it's way enough for any hills that I'm riding.
But yes, the caveat being that whether you want to admit it or not, you are a strong cyclist and stronger than most people. So like I wouldn't, yeah, and you're light. So that bike, I would not be riding on hilly stuff because it's not how I like to ride a bike.
I would say it works for me. I like having slightly less and one less battery to charge. Again, a niche problem because the electric group set. Don't do it just for the sake of doing it because it's might not be appropriate. But expect to put a pretty small chainring on if that's your goal.
Yeah.
Ronald in Tennessee emailed us to say, in episode 48, one of you mentioned that no one suspects a cyclist. That's very true. In the late 90s, I worked in a bike shop and one of our customers was a drug dealer. He once told me how he obtained some of his product. It was quite ingenious. He would plant seeds in specific areas, just off the side of the road, where they would get the best water and light. He would then periodically ride by and just look at them without stopping. He'd then later harvest the product when he knew he wasn't being followed by the police or anyone else. A harvest would then be packed into his front and rear panniers, and he emphasized the importance of always having full panniers. That way, they never notice a change in the size of them. He's being watched by who? He ended up going to jail for a short period of time for something unrelated to the products he sold. It was then we found out how big of a player he was in our state. Thanks, Ronald. Oh,
excellent story.
So he should have stuck to the small time. Just don't get too greedy.
Yes, exactly.
That's what we're saying.
It is always the downfall, isn't it? Doing that one last job.
Someone else also on that episode 48, there were a lot of comments like, "What about Lance Armstrong?" And all the dopers.
But no one did suspect him for a really long time, to be fair.
Yeah, but people would suspect now, wouldn't they?
They would. They would.
But
now.
I think just when you're dressed in lycra, you're not causing mischief when you're out and about.
Exactly. Everyone's looking that way onto doping, and you go the other way onto selling weed or whatever he was, presumably weed. Which, I mean, in some states is now legal, so he wouldn't even have to do it surreptitiously, would he? But I'm assuming not in Tennessee. Well, thanks, Ronald. That was a great story. We also had an email from Scott. He said, "Hi guys, I listened to one of your previous podcasts on the way to work in March about men having their prostate checked and also having a PSA test done. I've never heard of a PSA test, but I had many of the symptoms that you discussed. I had just ignored them and hoped for the best for 2 years. When I got to work, I immediately arranged a PSA test with my GP. It came back high, so I was given a prostate exam. Nothing was found. I was then given another PSA test, which came back even higher, so I was referred for an MRI. I was called to hospital this morning for further tests as there was an enlargement which indicates cancer. The GP had not noticed it on the check last month. I'm not certain what the future holds, but I just wanted to thank you for raising awareness on your show. I have a chance now that might be solvable thanks to the Wild Ones podcast. By the way, I'm fit as a fiddle. I cycle between 5,000 and 6,000 miles every year, and I go to the gym about 4 times a week. I urge all men to get themselves checked as soon as they have difficulty peeing. Thanks again, all. I appreciate it. Sorry to hear that, Scott. Thank you very much for letting us know.
What's a PSA test? I missed. This must have been an episode where I wasn't here.
Yes, it was. So this was back in episode 35. If you want to go and check that out, Nick was our special guest. The PSA test is a blood test that can help detect cancer. It's definitely worth noting that it is not perfect. Someone actually pointed out the reason, because we were talking about potential screening, the reason it's not currently offered as screening is that sometimes it can create false negatives and false positives. So it's definitely just a diagnostic tool. However, I think the most important thing here is do not ignore symptoms. So I'm going to read out what the symptoms are again. The symptoms are needing to pee more frequently, often during the night, needing to rush to the toilet, difficulty in starting peeing or hesitancy, straining or taking a long time while peeing, weak flow, feeling that your bladder is not completely emptied, blood in urine or blood in semen. So if you have any of those symptoms, speak to your doctor and get tested. And Scott, we hope that you get well soon.
Good luck, Scott.
Yeah, good luck, Scott.
Thanks for all your emails. And if you'd like to send us one too, you can do so at the Wild Ones podcast at cademedia.co.uk. That is all for today.
You're about to say it. Last week we asked if you could help us hit 1K reviews on Spotify. Well, I had a look literally 2 days later and we were on 1.2K reviews.
So now can you help us get to 100,000 reviews?
100,000.
No, thank you very much. That's awesome. You smashed the brief.
Cheers, guys.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you, everybody.
See you on the next one.